Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, and welcome to Startup Marketing Strategy and AMA with Mayra Ceja. My name is Colin Mahan, and I'm a program manager at the Nasdaq Entrepreneurial Center. And for those of you who may not know, the Nasdaq Center is a nonprofit that's building a better path for entrepreneurs worldwide by improving inclusion, access, and knowledge in entrepreneurship. As you may have just seen in the chat, the Nasdaq Entrepreneurial Center, along with our partner Mentor Cloud, launched a free mentor matching platform for entrepreneurs called Mentor Makers. You can create your own advisory board to guide and inspire you within the moment mentorship from topic experts and professionals dedicated to providing exceptional mentorship to entrepreneurs across all races, industries, and geographies. So find or become a mentor today by using the link in the chat. Mentorship matters to all entrepreneurs. Their success is dependent on it. We're going to open up for live Q&A and AMA at the end of the event, so please submit your questions in the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen throughout the presentation. Now, none of what we do here at the center could be possible without all the amazing support from our sponsors, including Nasdaq, Lehigh University, Bank of the West, Airbnb, KPMG, Wilson Sonsini, Woodruff Sawyer, BPM, and Hubspot. We're grateful and humbled by their contributions. Now, during these still unique times, we're curious on how sentiment is among the entrepreneurs we work with. So we're going to start by taking a quick poll to let us know how you're feeling about your business right now. We've been polling this since the beginning of 2020, and tell you what, these numbers have been going all over the place, but hopefully optimism is on the rise. And if not, our speaker today will hopefully help with some of those other ones. I'm going to end this poll in a moment because I don't want to waste too many time. All right, looks like optimism's at the top, but understand there's a little bit of survival mode and anxiety and just a tiny bit of fear out there. So hopefully our presentation again today will help. So without any further delay, please join me in giving a warm welcome to our special guest. Mayra Ceja is a sales and marketing expert at Hubspot, and she's also a former VC. Mayra, welcome.
Hi there. I'm super excited to be here, Colin. I feel like this is such a fun group already. I see a lot of people from various places, Jersey, Virginia, and really excited for everyone's questions.
Love it. Well, I'm going to let you get started and we'll be here for Q&A.
Great. Let's rock and roll. We have a lot to cover here. This is ultimately your time, so I want to make sure you all get the most out of it. I have a lot to cover. Let me go ahead and go into full screen here. All right. I have a lot to cover. I welcome any questions throughout. I'll try and get to them after we go through a few of these slides. But let's get started. So my name is Mayra Ceja. I work at Hubspot, and today we're going to be talking about marketing strategy and tools. As some of you may know, we have a partnership with Nasdaq. We are huge fans of everything that Nasdaq is doing. And for you guys, we also have a discount code whenever you guys are ready to check out Hubspot itself. Now, about me, who's going to be talking to you at the other end of the table. My name is Mayra. I'm deeply passionate about startups in general because I've been working with startups for a very long time. Prior to joining Hubspot, I've been in venture capital where I took that from 0 to 21 investments. I also love tennis, cooking, and I have a podcast. Those are just fun facts about me. But in terms of Hubspot, just so you guys know, we have a lot of free items for you guys, whether it's a free CRM, we have 30% discount, and we have a lot of educational stuff, including webinars like this. And quick 30 seconds on Hubspot. We are a CRM platform used for marketing, sales, and also service. So whenever you guys are ready, please do know that we integrate with over 500 different integrations, and really you can get started with just one hub or grow as you need to with us. But let's get started to today's topic. So today what we're going to be covering is a variety of different topics. I'm only going to be going a couple of different tips to really solidify your strategy tactics and hopefully get everybody to that next level of marketing strategy. Let's see how many of these we can get through. All right, so the first one is really centers around buyer's persona. What HubSpot's really known about is really developing around inbound marketing. Some of you may be familiar with this, so I'll go quickly with it, but do understand that when we think about buyer's persona, everything we do, include HubSpot for ourselves. And we've grown from a teeny tiny startup to a very large multi-billion-dollar organization. And we use the same concepts. So when you think about buyer's persona, you want to be thinking about demographics versus psychographics. And what we mean, most people really think about the very basics like age, location, who are you really targeting, but you also want to be thinking about what's motivating that person to actually make that purchase. And this becomes a little bit different when we think about B2B and B2C, but you really want to not only think about it, but do a quick write-up. And as I mentioned, B2B and B2C are going to be slightly different. I know many of you come from a variety of different backgrounds. So what I did here is really lay out the groundwork of how there's different goals, different drivers. You also want to be thinking about that there's actually very different people involved in the actual purchasing. Most of us are familiar with the consumer side because we're all consumers of something. So those decisions can be quickly made at the individual level. But when you think about a B2B type of business, many times it involves multiple key players, and it involves different types of marketing and messaging to each one, which is what we're going to go through in a couple of the other slides. And again, you want to be thinking about what are you actually solving for? Is this an emotional purchase on the B2B side, or do you actually need to make a business case, right? Is it logical? Is it actually going to improve the business? And how does your product, service, or software kind of improve the actual outcome for that direct purchaser? And what role do they actually play? And as I mentioned, we use this concept for even our own business. So here we've created 2 quick buyer personas. And here's the quick write-up of how we think about Marketing Michelle. Marketing Michelle is an aspiring CEO. She's very numbers driven. She's really looking to improve her business and actually show value to her entire company. And part of this is that you don't need to go into this much detail. Most startups tend to start with 2 maybe personas, but you want to start writing these down and think about what else do I know about the customer that I'm trying to target, because this now sets the groundwork for the rest of the things that we're going to be talking about around marketing. All right, so buyers matrix. So here is the buyers matrix that we want to be thinking about, particularly when we think about B2B type of companies. And what I mean by that is you want to be thinking about how many people are actually involved in this purchase and what do they actually need to be learning, right? So for the user, it's a very different purchasing decision than actually for the gatekeeper who's worried more about product safety, any sort of compromises to the tech system. Then for the user, they just want to know that it works and it's actually improving their daily lives. So there's a lot on this slide, but you will be getting a copy after this webinar, but I want you guys to start thinking about how can you actually break down that buyer's decision and understand it a little bit better, because that's actually going to inform your exact messaging and marketing, not only to which person you're talking to, but then we're going to go into is actually where are they at in terms of the buyer's journey. Which gets us to our point number 3, which is really understanding your customer. Now, most startups make the mistake of actually thinking that their customers are ready to buy, when actually most startup customers are much earlier on in terms of this buyer's journey, where they're actually more of this awareness stage. They're actually trying to figure out their own problem. They're trying to maybe figure out a new industry. You're doing a lot of education, not only on the industry, on the brand, how your product actually solves for that customer's pain point. But there's a whole bunch of education that needs to happen before you even start to get into consideration stage and decision stage. And I bring this up because while this may seem simple and logical, we find time and time again that most startups do not spend enough time on this earlier stage of awareness and consideration and quickly go to the demo stage, or even on their landing pages, they'll say, hey, are you guys ready to buy? Here, call us if you're ready to buy. You actually want to be thinking about in your entire marketing strategy, okay, how am I finding these people? Where are they at in the buyer's journey? Any type of outreach or inbound staff, what type of information do they need to start moving closer and closer to that decision stage? And we're actually tactical steps in terms of the types of materials that you can start writing. So that's what we have here. All right, so this is actually even also how we think about, and you may have, if you ever Google anything around marketing or sales, you probably may have come across some of the marketing resources that we build. But this is actually how we think about. So top of funnel, what really works out well, you can do things like white papers. These are broader, these are more statements, checklists, short videos. That works well. When you think about middle of the funnel, you want to be doing something a little bit more in depth, ebooks, case studies, tutorials, webinars, demos. That's when those types of marketing tools really are the most effective. Now, when you think about bottom of the funnel, this is actually when you invite people to actually try. You want to actually interact with them, invite them for actual sales calls, knowing that that's actually the biggest consumption of most of your time. All right. And now I talked a little bit about inbound method, and you're welcome to share with me how familiar you are with inbound methodology, but I'll quickly go through it with a couple of you at a high level. What we really think about in methodology is that we want to be figuring out a way to attract the right people, figuring out of the whole world who the right thing for us and attracting more similar type of personalities to those, and then making sure that we actually have a full process of, okay, complete strangers, don't know your brand, don't know your product, to those people then becoming engaged prospects, making sure that they have a funnel to go into it, then making sure that once they become customers, you have some sort of method and process and also tools along the way to delight them and actually turn those customers into some of your best promoters. I will say this, I'm sure some of you who have experienced already with direct sales may understand this, right? It's much harder to acquire a brand new customer than actually either one, get a repeat customer or leverage that really happy customer into something else. Now, when we think about inbound methodology, here are some of the tools that we can use, right? So you have your website, you have your content marketing strategy. So anything that you're publishing, your blogs, all of that. And you actually expand this through social media and then through some search ads. So all of this is, again, figuring out how do you attract the best people into your funnel. And within that, right, we want to make sure that everything's connected and that you actually think about the full journey. There's nothing worse that I see when we have startups that do a great job at getting 1,000 people to their websites, but don't have the connecting piece, which is that landing page. And we're going to go over a couple best tips around that, but making sure that then that's connected, that it's connected to something follow-up as something additional like ebooks, webinars, and something else. And continuing to look at that pattern and figuring out, okay, where are the breaks? How can I make that path a little bit smoother? Now, this is actually complemented with any of your outbound strategies that you're currently doing. And by outbound, I mean anything related to contact list, emails, any cold calls that you're doing via LinkedIn, anything like that. When you meet strangers on a plane or or at an industry event, that's really what that's really goes into your outbound. And again, but that connects with some of the marketing strategy that you already have and some of the content that you're already building, which are ebooks, your webinars, and any of your email campaigns. And I'll talk about email specifically in a minute. Now, for sales, we want to make sure that then all your marketing efforts are leading right to that point of sale, where then you can hand it off to a person and have somebody directly follow up with that. All right. And I can't see the chat, so I'm just going to let anybody stop me if there's any big questions, but I'll keep going. All right. Email marketing. Okay, here's a couple of hot tips on email marketing. All right, so email marketing seems pretty standard, but I'll tell you that the obvious isn't always obvious in terms of how people approach email marketing. This is kind of the quick checklist that you want to be thinking about when you think about email marketing. You want to be looking at the subject line, right? Did the subject line really get people to open? You want to make sure that each email has a call to action. And remember, you need to think about what that call to action is, not from the perspective of, hey, buy something, complete stranger. It's like, hey, complete stranger, can I educate you on something, depending on where they're at. Some of them may be ready for purchase, but not everybody is. So you need to figure out, how do you start distinguishing those people and making curated list for this email marketing attempt, right? So making sure that they do have a call to action, that they're able to move forward, that you have a goal in mind. Why are you emailing these people? Asking when they're a complete stranger for 30 minutes of their time might be too much. So you might want to start off with something smaller. Hey, complete stranger, we noticed that you were in this market. I want to share with you this industry report. We think it'll be helpful to you, to your business, whatever it is, right? Think about something like that. Or if you are doing more consumer, it can be a little bit more shortened. The buyer's journey is a little bit shortened. So just think about what is it exactly that you want to do whenever you send an email out. As I mentioned, segmenting is going to be important, and you can do some of the segmenting in the questions that you ask on your website, in any of the analysis that you do on any of your lists that you're doing any outbound. Also, quick thing, responsive design. Most people are checking their email on their mobile phone. So you want to make sure that whatever method that you're using to sending out these emails has that. Do remember that cold emailing still works, LinkedIn works. So a lot of people are still seeing success, but email still continues to be one of the highest return rates for any startup or small business. All right, let's keep going. All right, we have a quick question. What recommendations do you have for B2B startups that wants to use marketing to test new products to see if it resonates? Perfect. Let me go into this. Actually feeds into some of the metrics that we're going to use to understand if email is working. I'll touch base on that, and then I can give you some recommendations. So when we think about email, please remember that there are better times to receive email than there are not. This doesn't mean you can't work on the weekends. Most startups do, right? You can't work late on Friday. Most people do. That just means that you should have a system that helps you then send it at the right time, like 9 a.m., noon, preferably, not late night Friday when you're actually sending some of these emails. So make sure that you have some tool that allows you to preset those. Let's see. Tuesdays are the highest open rates. So just keep that in mind. That doesn't mean you can't email people on any other day. There are just best times to keep in mind, and you can easily do this with some tooling. When we think about marketing email and actually learning from what's working and what's not, here are a few things that you want to keep in mind. You want to be looking at these types of metrics. You want to be looking, okay, I sent out 100 emails. What's actually happening, right? You want to be looking at your open rates. Your open rates are tied, remember, to that subject line that I talked about. If your open rates are low, that means your subject line is not enticing enough people. If their open rates are high, that means it's a great one-liner. Now, the second piece of it is this click-through rate. Maybe you use something quirky that got people to open the thing, but what you're offering is not really matching. You're not going to see click-through rate. So you want to make sure that your click-through rate is actually the next piece of it, which means the body of your content and that call to action in that email piece. So experiment with that and figure out, okay, how do I drive up my click-through rate? Because it actually will end up longer term, right, as have a significant impact in your overall sales. So when we look at that click-through rate, that's really what we're trying to target. You also want to be thinking about any deliveries and kind of getting rid of those lists. But this allows you now to actually start testing and learning rather than just, completely cold emailing and emailing blind. The other hot tip that I want to say, as people think about resources and tools to help you do this, especially when you're a startup and you're probably one or two people in a room, or either way you have limited staff, is looking at tools that help you leverage this concept of sequences, which means multiple emails sent with one click. So here's how you do it. So you set up email number one, right, on today or whatever time, or if you're writing them on the Friday, you send them out for like a Tuesday send. Within X number of days, you can set that other email automatically. And then you start seeing all of these stats, right? And then figuring out, okay, is this actually working? What can I change? And so here's what Hubspot system looks like. And I'm happy to send additional links if people want to learn more about that. But either way, whatever system you end up using, you want to make sure that you have some way to do that follow-up. Most people underestimate how many times it actually takes for you to reach out to a complete stranger. So our studies show that it takes around 7 times. Most people stop at like 2 to 3 of like emails to following up with a prospect. Now, this doesn't mean you email them every day for 7 days. This means actually you stretch it out. You figure out if they're clicking and opening, they should get the next message. If they're not clicking and opening, you should just get rid of them from your list, right? But think through what tools can help you actually do that, so that once you get a great list where you can start doing some outbound marketing, or even people that are coming onto your website. How do you do some of this automated emails sequentially, and think about that buyer's journey? You're not selling them again on day one about the sale, pay by now. For most people, you're actually thinking about, how can I educate this person on my product? Here's one thing, here's a different message, here's something different that might be value add, here's something different, right? So that it's actually engaging, and you're actually developing a relationship and trust with that person in an automatic and scalable way. All right. So content marketing. Now remember, these are all very high level projects. We have a lot of content on each one of these that we can go in deeper. But when we think about content marketing, right, there's all these pieces to it, from keyword searches to promotion. But we want to be, again, focusing and tying all of this actually to our buyer's journey. So we want to be thinking about, where are they at in terms of their knowledge base? So for this example, sales AI, right? So the first step would be like, what is it, right? You're doing that brand building, that awareness. It's only with like on the consideration stage that they're actually considering really buying. They may be looking at you and your competitors. So you want to be creating content around that. And you also want to be thinking that at the decision, right? So how does it actually work? How can you help that buyer really understand that, even when they're not in front of a live person? Here is a quick snapshot of the type of content that you can write along the buyer's journey, for both B2B and B2C, that we find really works for different people. So on the B2C side, really you see a lot more viral content, infographics, a lot of visual stuff, videos. You want to be thinking what works best for your type of audience. On the B2B side, you can't underestimate really white papers, anything that seems you as an industry expert, anything that's adding value, that's helping them become acquainted with you, with your product, and developing that trust as they move down that buyer's journey. I'll briefly touch upon this topic clustering. When you think about content creation, remember, you can't just write. At the beginning of the internet, where there was not a lot of competition, you could write, it was like a race to create as much content as you could. Nowadays, you actually want to become an expert on a couple of fields and write your content around that. And by what we mean, so here's an example of even what we do around Instagram. So you think about the center of this clustering, right, is this ultimate guide. And then around it is all these sub questions that people might have that, right, will be very attractive to Google or SEO when they think about buying Instagram followers. Does it work or not? All these micro questions are important to building an expertise around this one topic, Instagram marketing. So think about it for your particular startup in your industry. What would be the best 2 to 3 topics, and start creating content around that instead of dispersing all content. And we know this works because originally we actually have done this for our own website. So originally it was this race, right, to create as much content. We were earlier on in the internet. This was, 7-10 years ago, and it was working. We had tons of traffic. At some point, Google changed their algorithm. Our traffic completely dropped. And what we're actually seeing is that we actually had to reorganize our entire content around this topic clustering to actually, one, help the search engines really understand what was relevant to the end user, help the search engine out, and in essence also boost our rankings. Now, what is cool about this is, one, you don't need to have this huge library like we did, and it's less if you actually start off right. But this is actually a great way for startups to compete. And you can actually compete. We have this traffic counts example that you can check out later, but it's really about how startups can compete if you dominate a smaller space versus going really, really wide. So now let's look at social media. We'll touch upon this briefly. Social media works even when you think about B2B. You want to be thinking about, how does it actually incorporate it and which channels actually work for you. So one interesting thing is actually for Instagram, when you think about or not actually for Instagram, but any type of social media, it actually works better if it's actually more organic and seen by different people rather than the brand. Here's what we have on Hubspot, where we encourage our other employees to go ahead and contribute to it. What you might want to do is also, as a startup, right, have a competition. Can we all write X number of articles, share them, cross-share them? If you belong to any type of group of other startups, ask those startups to then like them, relink them, so that the network expands. Most startups want to help you and then you can return the favor, right? But think about how can it be more organic? How do you actually make it sound like a real brand rather than this, third party? But as I mentioned, what's important is not just thinking you should do social in general, but actually measuring. Does social actually impact your business? For some businesses, it's a great resource. For other ones, it's not. And remember that it may not always be about a sale, but it's establishing your brand. But you want to be thinking about which actual channels and concentrate on those. You don't have to do all of them, but think about where is your audience? Where are you actually getting the click-through rates? So here's actually a great snapshot. And what we do at Hubspot, you can actually see it across all your social medias. You can look at, right? LinkedIn is performing better than Twitter. It might be different for certain businesses, but you want to understand where is it coming from. You also want to set goals, right, for your own team in terms of how much is actually being published. When it's low, you can probably see some traffic going down, but starting to think about that, that's actually how you're starting to create a real winning strategy. All right, let's try and wrap up a few more points in before taking other questions. But really quickly on social media. So here is something that I encourage everybody to have. For social media, it's a lot of work, especially when you're working on other parts of your business. You would just want to make sure that you have something that can post later on. Here's what we have, where you can post across different channels, but there's multiple different technologies that you can use for that. And remember that you do want to also optimize your pipeline. It's not so much about marketing, right? Remember, getting the people just to your website, you also want to nurture them, figure out, okay, which ones are going to be active buyers so that you can actually hand them off to the right salespeople. And you want to make sure that the systems are connected so that then you can actually tell which person's leading what, where is your pipeline and how much of that is coming from your marketing efforts. Remember that our 8th point here is to remember to upsell and cross-sell. So this is when we think about this flywheel effect, where you want to be thinking about, great, found complete strangers, starting to attract them, turning them into prospects, the sales piece of it. But then actually, once you get those customers, you also need to continue to market to them, because one, that's a huge opportunity for you to upsell to them. And then there's also an opportunity to cross-sell, or even to help them help you get referrals. Right. So Airbnb had a great strategy. I'm sure you've seen it with various other companies where they have, here's an extra $400 for you and the guest, right? So you send it to a friend, etc. Right. So think about if there's any opportunities within your business to actually activate your customers as promoters and start marketing to them as well. Don't forget to optimize your website. And by that, we want to make sure that there is a clear call to action within your landing pages. It's not always ask for a demo or a call here, but really think through who are the various different people, where are they coming in from, and what type of information you need. We talked a little bit about SEO. Just want to flag this here. Make sure that you have some sort of system that helps you flag the different pages that actually need work, that makes suggestions. Here's what we think about in terms of keywords tied to some of your content strategy that you're doing on marketing. We had talked about, right, this topic clustering, but then figuring out, okay, if I want to become an expert in Instagram marketing, whatever your topic is, and these sub questions, what are the keywords, and start creating marketing content around that, making sure that it's all tied to SEO, that you have some way of some data analytics around this. And you want to be looking, the key KPIs or targets that you want to be thinking about is how long are they there, right? And then ultimately the click-through rate, what are you asking them on each page to actually do, and are they responding to that content? Overall traffic analytics, you want to be looking at just where is it coming from. You may be paying ads, but then is it coming from social media referrals, and then just seeing which one is part of it, so that then you can figure out where to double down on. We are almost done. I'm going to leave you with number 10, which don't forget to start off everything with a CRM. So here is a simple CRM of what ours looks like. But the cool thing about this is that you can tie it in and automate a lot of this based on your website. When people fill out those forms, it starts to create a contact. When you actually call them, it remembers, right, who, based on that URL, who that person is. So think about what system of record you want to have that provide scalability. Because remember, if you're an early stage startup, it's not always just going to be you or you and your partner. And Excel sheets don't scale. And the best part of it, we do offer a free CRM, which you can always get started. Some of you asked about tools. So here are the various tools that you can use at these various places, strangers, customers. We also have Hubspot tools at any point for forums and CRM. But those are kind of some of our top 10 takeaways. And I think I'm actually right on time. I'm going to open up to a few questions that I see on the chat, but I don't know, Colin, if you want to come back on, I can. If not, I'll keep going.
I'm here. Yeah, awesome. And thank you so much, Mayra, for that. Your internet sounds better, but we got rid of your video for a second. So let's see if we can get you back on video. All right, and if it starts glitching again, we'll just have a conversation via audio. Sound good?
Sound good.
Awesome. So you addressed this question a little bit earlier, but wanted to see if you could expand on your answer to it. Is what recommendations for B2B startup that wants to use marketing to test a new product to see if it resonates? It's brand new, so they haven't developed a fully fleshed out marketing strategy.
Absolutely. So I think at the end of the day, so there's a couple of choices with testing. So one, I'll say this about ads. When you can do short, quick testing with ads take a while to actually build an audience, or actually they're an expensive way to build customers and an audience, but they're a great way to get some quick feedback. So one quick way that you do this is actually set up like quick test ads, do some product market testing even before you have a product. You can also send them to a landing page that has a wait list. I've seen that as a great, really hacker tip from a lot of startups. If you're, I imagine at some point you all will be thinking about fundraising from investors. How can you prove to investors very early stage or very early on that there is appetite for your product? One way is, hey, let me look at these ads. Let's see if we can actually target the right personas, the right people for the right product, put them on the landing page, get them to do some wait lists, get them to show and commit to something, whether that's even an email, okay, I want to learn more. That starts showing commitment to investors, that starts showing some commitment to yourself, to a potential co-founder that you're looking to attract. And really is a great, easy way to do some A/B testing with your messaging, with your product, even pre-product.
That's great. Yeah. And the landing page thing is a good traction I've seen function.
Absolutely.
Let's see. Want to learn more about B2B startups cold outreach for an intro meeting strategy?
More about cold outreach. Okay, great. Cold outreach is really interesting, right? So one, it's something that you must do, and you need to psych yourself up to actually do it. So it all starts off with, you guessed it, buyer's persona. And I say that because you want to figure out who are you actually trying to target, and then based on that, create a list. And by that, I mean, so for example, if you're in a B2B scenario, think about, okay, it's not just this type of industry, type of companies that want to buy into me, but you want to be looking, are there anything else geographically that helps you constrain that list? Right, size of the company might matter, right? Are they small businesses that you're trying to attract, or really large enterprise corporations that might be a good client? Based on that, it starts to make your list a little bit narrow. Then from there, you want to be looking at people's titles, right? So who in the company can actually help you get in? Who in the company has the power to make any of these purchasing decisions? Think about that. It works the same way from the consumer perspective, is who's going to be your first buyer, who is it easiest to reach, and then from there start doing some cold calling and emailing. One of the things that most people do is that they try to do just email. I suggest that you combine it with email, LinkedIn, calling, if you can find their phone numbers. There are a couple products, and I'm sure you can Google more, that help you further identify how to contact people. So one, LinkedIn is pretty straightforward and easy, but it doesn't give you their email addresses, but you can use things like Hunter.io. We use that to figure out, what's the exact email address of the people that you're trying to target. So I would suggest setting up the list, then from there, figuring out what's your message going to be, what's that series of emails that you're going to send to try and follow up, and also start thinking about it as a process. So once you get them on, what do you educate them on? What else do they need to know? Now, I would personally set up actually a couple of these qualifiers of figuring out people's intent to purchase. And intent to purchase means, one, are they in the market at all? Or how long are they going to be before they can make a decision? So is it 6 months, a year? So you start getting a sense for them. This is all needs to be done before you set up a demo so that you actually understand. Now, I do have an entire sort of session around the demo call itself, but I will bring up like a couple of interesting points of the demo, which is for the demo, most people jump into, hey, here's what my product can do. And they talk about their product because they want to show off all the bells and whistles. What you actually want to do is take a step back. So once you get to the demo call, think about it again. Where is this person in the buyer's journey? What do they care about? All right. Like, what are they motivated by? Most of the time you don't know until you ask, right? So I would suggest the actual demo call has a structure. The first 10 minutes are about getting to know the person, right? The first 10, 20 minutes and asking deep level questions. What do they value, right? What is their timeline? In the perfect world, what numbers are they being, measured on that your product can help, so that then when you actually do a demo of any type of your product, you can go ahead and address those directly. So that means, hey, here's actually how my product solves your problem, right? So think about, again, you're moving them from attracting them from this marketing perspective to then this demo piece of it. But along the way, not only are you giving information, you're also learning a lot from them. And that's where you want to make sure that you can capture all of these within some sort of CRM that allows you then to make that call more productive, right? So that you can actually demo the right pieces, the ones that they truly care about, instead of the whole thing, which just might be too much for any 45, 30-minute or hour-long session you've selected.
That's super helpful. Great questions coming in. Keep them coming in. We've got a bunch of time for Q&A. Before I jump into our next question, Mayra, and I'm sure this will be an interesting in learning for you, but to our attendees out there, what's keeping you up at night? This not only helps this discussion, but it also helps the ones that we will be hosting in the future. So let us know. And Mayra looks like marketing is the leader. No surprise there.
Great.
So you're in the right place, folks. All right, next question. What's a good open rate? And I think this depends based on industry, but just generally speaking.
Great. And while I answer a couple of these questions, I'm actually curious from the group, you guys can write it into the chat. What specifically about marketing, right? Is it like the acquiring new customers? Is it like creating the content? Whatever you write, I'm just generally curious if you guys have more insight.
Looks like
about
growth.
Growth, okay, yeah. Because there's a lot of elements about marketing, right? And it can seem scary and daunting. At the end of the day, you need to start with a few of the basics, like I mentioned, and just do it like a daily habit, right? So just like how you exercise, I run every morning, but you all brush your teeth every morning, right? So then figure out, can you start doing something like that? And then setting aside some time at the beginning of the month to create a plan for your marketing, setting some core hours aside, because I know you guys have different parts of the business, right? But making sure that you're making progress, because the needle doesn't move itself on marketing. When you're a startup, you have to do a million things, but you do have to think about all aspects of your business, and you can't really outsource this. So one hacker tip that I have around marketing, if any of you are feeling overwhelmed by having to do it all, is that you do have to do the strategy as a founder, right? As somebody really in the business, you can't offshore that, you can't give that away. But what you can do then, once you set that strategy, or you set what articles do you actually want written, is that then you can go on Fiverr or any of these other resources that write articles for a flat fee. If you don't have the bandwidth, if you don't have the time, that then can supplement some of your efforts and strategy. But you have to set the parameters, you have to set the measurements. That's why I bring up this huge kind of top 10 points, because this gives you the groundwork. You do not have to do it all by yourself, but then you need to figure out, what do you outsource? What do you do well, right? And so when you're looking at best practices or even the right KPIs, one, it's first making sure that you have something to measure. You can always adjust. You won't always get it right at the first time. And even us, we constantly are reviewing, are these the right metrics that are influencing things? What should it be? It's hard to judge. You asked, I think, what the correct open rates are. Obviously, higher the better, but they're very different for different industries. What I want to make sure is that everybody's at least measuring and getting a baseline for where they should be at, right? Because for every 100 people, they'll give you some baseline. So you always just want to be building that and growing that a little bit bigger. And at some point, it's okay if not everybody opens it, but that's why you want to be measuring, right? The open rates to the click-through rates, because if your click-through rates are high, but your open rates are terrible, it actually says more about your subject line. So that's actually how people should be thinking about it, instead of looking like, hey, I need to get 50% open rates, which, by the way, are rare and shouldn't happen unless it's like a birthday party where you know all the people and they're excited to see you, right? So think about it that way. But yeah, what other questions do we have?
Let's see. So on the email marketing line still, there's somebody saying, I'm having trouble getting people to provide their email or sign up for emails. Any advice there?
Great. Yeah. So you have to ask yourself, if you were on the other end, when do you give out your email, right? I sometimes give it out for what? Like discounts? That seems like sometimes a good thing if I want to buy from that specific company, right? When do you give out your email? And think about it from their perspective. Why would they want to give out your email? There needs to be something of value that you're exchanging for that. It's a currency of sorts, right? So a few ways that people do this, right, with email collection is newsletter, a piece of it. You need to specify, right, what value they're going to add as industry insights into something like that. The other thing is download some guide of X. And you can actually, any of you at some point, Google anything on Hubspot, you'll see a lot of that. And you actually see that we put this into practice. When you want to download the best cold reach email templates, there will be a sign-up sheet for you to drop in your email, right? And so that's actually what you want to think about. So a person within your industry, what are they curious about? What do they want to know about? What can you offer that's easy, that's a one-time investment for you, meaning content creation, you create it once, but that then is actually going to be a little bit evergreen, so that, right, within a year, it still continues to add value to your website and is downloadable. And you want to start off small. Don't start off with a huge deep dive white paper. I would say start off small on small topics, on list, on something that's valuable, but that is mindful of your time constraints.
Super helpful. Yeah, and email, I guess, kind of is the new currency. If you get my email, you might be able to convert me at some point. Let's see. Based on customer segmentation, how many customer percentage should you build out early on to guide your strategy?
I would say no more than 2 at the beginning, like 3 to absolute max. But just think about, right? And the best advice that I can give people is actually to personify them. So give them a name, Michelle, right? Like Sally the salesperson, like whatever it is. Because what's helpful is actually if you can actually think about them real people, you can have other people within your company think about them as real people. It really influences, one, how you write, how you think about creating everything from a blog post to a call to action to, again, getting somebody to give you their email address. They're real people, right? Getting Colin, like what's going to motivate Colin to give me his email address? What is he interested in, right? And remember, as we think about email collections, you're giving value, you're extracting a little bit of value through that email. But what I encourage everyone is in that form is also to add 1 or 2 questions that allow you to qualify them a little bit better. So that could be anything from, geographic, if you don't have a plugin that tells you where they're from, but you can also ask them, what's your business size, right? And do a drop down. Are you, 0 to 100, 100 to whatever. If that's important, remember to your buyer's persona, so that you can start matching some of those questions every time you collect an email address. Don't ask too many, just 1 or 2 max. But people start giving you a little bit of information. You start to get to know that person a little bit better. So think about what's going to be helpful for you and include that in your forms. And all of you have answered some of these questions on somebody else's form. And now going forward, you're going to think about, whenever you're giving your email address, okay, why am I doing this? Like, what questions are they asking? What are they learning from me? Because that actually reinforces something that you should be doing for your business. And I encourage you all to look at the top websites. They all do it, right? They're all trying to get to know you, learn about how can they segment you into an area, so that then they can deliver more information for you. And at the beginning, you don't know exactly who you may not always guess who your right personas are, but it's better to start naming them than not, and figure out they're the wrong one, than trying to market to everyone. Marketing to everyone is not going to work, because there's just too much competition, too much noise. You're not going to be able to attract everyone. So highly encourage thinking about, from that segmentation, who do you actually want to be attracting, and then figuring out, even if they give you their email, they may still not be the right person, but I need to know, right? If your product is only for certain type of people, like how do you segment those out into different lists?
I love that. On the same freebie guide deliverable, what do you think about pop-ups?
Yeah, love pop-ups. Super easy to do. Speaking of pop-ups, the other cool thing that is good, live chat. I didn't include it on this, but we've been finding more and more engagement with live chat pop-ups. You can do the same type of marketing form questioning, like qualification of customers, as you can with like a form, but it's a little bit more interactive. So I encourage people to maybe consider pop-ups, live chat. And by this live chat pop-up, I have to say it's not always live. It's like this pop-up Q&A thing that gives you some, hey, want to talk to a live person. Doesn't mean right now. It means there's the queue. You can get back to that person via email, but you can ask them questions like, hey, are you most interested in, like, let's use HubSpot. Like, you'd be like, hey, are you most interested in sales or marketing? Do you have marketing questions? Here's a guide. Or, hey, somebody will get back to you. But you want to ask them qualifying questions before you get on the phone with them. And that's kind of a little bit more mainstream in terms of our expectations, even how we interact, right, with other people's websites, is that what we find is more and more hesitancy to get just on the phone. So even pop-ups where I'm learning more about the product on my own tend to be really, really helpful.
Yeah, chatbots.
Yeah.
It's a little front end heavy, but then it saves you tons of time later.
So that's the other thing. So yeah, sorry, that's actually chatbots are like really easy. And you can actually use really easy plugins on your website and also on HubSpot that like really allow you to create them in like a few minutes. So no longer are they actually very like code heavy, but you can actually get a lot of these plugins if that's the route that you choose to go with chatbots. But again, thinking about the actual experience, put yourself in their shoes and think about, okay, I download this piece, then what? Do I forget about this company completely? Or is this company actually following up with me? How many times have you purchased something because a person just followed up with you? You're like, oh yeah, I did care about that. Like, I left my cart open and forgot about it, but I actually did want to buy it. So remember that follow-up is super important, but you need to have a way to contact them. So think about any way that you can start forming a relationship with them so that you're top of mind when they're actually ready to purchase.
That's great advice. What kind of ad spend makes sense for the awareness stage for B2C, especially like a new type of service?
Sorry, what was the question?
What kind of ad spend makes sense for the awareness stage?
There's no right budget. You want to do is very qualified experimentation. And so by that, I mean making sure that you have some sort of tracker that tracks this across all like the search engines. So with ads, you want to run short experiments. The thing with ads is that they can get you traffic early on, but they're not going to build your long-term traffic, right? At some point, the ads will get too expensive, especially if you become bigger. I think about this with the example of Casper. So at the beginning of the internet, getting an ad for mattresses was super cheap. But then as more competitors came into the space, the keyword for mattresses online, right, went up to like $800, which made no sense. So you want to be thinking about ads early on as those quick wins. Either you're learning something from your customer in terms of wording, framing that's resonating with them, or they're actually making purchases short run. And then from there, A/B testing. So then you look at, okay, where does it scale? Looking at that is going to be a much better yield than actually saying, hey, I'm going to throw, I got some startups, they just got a new round of like, okay, $5,000 monthly or whatever it is. That's not really the solution. It's really more being like, hey, I'm going to set $500 to run this short experiment and another 500. This makes sense for my business. And then looking at your overall budget for your month. And it's very different depending on how much money you've raised, how much personal resources you have, all good stuff.
Awesome. This person might want to give us a little more context, but they're asking what will be the good number of emails in a welcome series? And I'm guessing they mean drip campaign, but I don't know.
Oh, yes. So I imagine, so a good number in an email series is you start off with at least like 3. The thing is you want to be changing that list. If they're not opening like by the 3rd one, get rid of them, right? Like they're clearly not interested. No, you're just spamming them. Or they've put you in some junk box, like, which again, it's about what you do with your junk email if it's not what you want to get. But if I'm opening, you can keep sending them, right? So I would check it out after point 3. If there's no like signs of life, like let it go. If they're actually opening, engaging, clicking through, keep them, add them to 7, right? And then check them again. So that's actually where some of this metrics and automation really comes in, because it allows you then to form a few rules that then drops everybody from that list if they don't meet X criteria, which would mean at least an open rate or a click-through rate. Those super clickers, right? Then you can maybe come up with a sub list of the super clickers and then be like, oh, maybe I should send out a personalized email to that sub list.
Awesome. Sorry, I'm just having a frog in my throat moment. Another question came in around strategies for consultants. Is there any difference?
What do you mean by that?
They said, can these strategies translate for a self-expert? I don't have products. The product's me.
Oh, you're the product. Yeah, you're a business. You're like Jay-Z. I am a businessman.
Yeah.
Highly encourage that. But yeah, absolutely. So whether think about it, you're still a product. You are services, right? So think about it in exactly the same way. If you're a solopreneur, how do you package so you're still dealing with the same constraints of like pricing, promotion, like all of these very basic things that involve a product and a marketing strategy. So for now, your marketing strategy has probably been, because I've done some consulting myself, it's probably been word of mouth, right? How can you scale that? You can scale that by doing 100-person outreach to targeted individuals that have matched the people who have bought services from you, right? So that's your persona. So think about it that way, right? And if you do that 100 times, like once a week or whatever your cadence is, you're going to have more and more business or a queue, right, lined up. And you can just tell people, hey, like, I don't have time. Or then at some point, grow your own consulting thing, right, and get additional staffing. But similarly, right, you're thinking about it, persona, who has been my buyer, who demonstrates this type of interest? What's your outbound strategy, sending 100 emails to similar people? And then what's your inbound strategy, which means on your website, how does it show you're actually an expert in whatever you're doing? So thinking about that content that you're producing, thinking about like what else reinforces that will be great, and starting to show that also around social media, whatever works for your type of industry.
Awesome. Going back to the wait list, somebody was saying what type of metrics should indicate that you're doing well or hitting it on the head for your target audience?
Yeah. So for wait list, they're only so there's two things. One, why do you care about that number? You either care about it for yourself because you're looking to spend more money, or you're looking to spend somebody else's money, which means an investor. So you need to figure out what that right number is for you. So let's say launching super simple, like a restaurant, or it's actually complex, but simple for us to wrap our heads around. So a restaurant, right? And like your totally new food concept, whatever it is, what will it take for you to make that full commitment? This is kind of like a pre-test, right? Similarly, you do this for investors, whether they angels, whatever. You want to tell them, hey, I've de-risked this somehow because I have a mailing list that's growing that shows this demand, right? So that's kind of what you want to be thinking about, is like, what's that number? The more the merrier, but even 100 people starts to say there's some interest. You always also want to be looking at percentage growth, right? So did I grow, have a target by growing your mailing list every week by 20% or whatever it is. And obviously the percentage gets smaller, the bigger your list is. But, at the beginning, just try to double it, which means how do you get the first 10 people to 20 and keep on doubling it until you can't double it because it's too big. That starts to set a real target for you, and you can celebrate those small wins. And that's actually how you get the snowball going.
Love it. Well, we could spend all day speaking about marketing with you, Mayra, because you're a pro, so really appreciate your time. But what's one takeaway out of all of this that we've discussed and based on the questions that we've had? What's one takeaway around startup marketing that you have for people today?
Yeah, I would say the one thing that I would say is really, again, focus on like who those target personas are and set yourself up a very small plan in 30 minutes. Like without a plan, I think most people just kind of tend to shoot by the hip with like this marketing stuff and it's overwhelming. But I would really just say very simple, write it down for yourself, take 30 minutes every month. And then this is how you start measuring, is what I'm doing actually working or not? So that would be my one key takeaway. Love
that. Well, thank you so much for joining us. For those of you on the call, appreciate you joining our conversation today. Sounds like everyone is saying that love the conversation. Thank you, Mayra. So really appreciate you taking the time, Mayra. Thanks again for your support. Sorry, you cut out.
Oh, sounds great.
So thank you. We look forward to welcoming you back online soon. And for those of you in attendance, we'd love your feedback and we hope you can join us for upcoming events. So everyone have a great rest of your week and we look forward to seeing you online soon. Thanks again, everyone.